we get older, it's natural to feel a little disconnected from younger generations. It can be a little head-scratching to understand their slang, the trends they follow, sense of fashion, and more. Don't get me started on the rise of bucket hats, biker shorts, and platform sneakers this past year. Let's also not forget the popularity of apps like TikTok and Snapchat. Have you heard about the latest hashtag cold girl beauty trend on the talk? It's chapped lips, rosy cheeks, and matte foundation that make up this new icy look. Who would have thought? But all jokes aside, Gen Z may seem like a new term to you and me, but some in this group are now in their mid-20s. Pew Research Center says Gen Zers include everyone born between 1997 and 2012.
You're talking everyone from elementary school into the first years of being in the workforce.
That's John Schlimm, a researcher, professor, and the author of What Would Gen Z Do? Everything you don't know about Gen Z, but should. Schlimm says there are many interesting facets about this cohort. For one, they're extremely tech and social media savvy. The first iPhone launched in 2007, when the oldest Gen Zers were just 10 years old. Unlike past generations, this group grew up with continuous access to the internet, cell phones, and widespread Wi-Fi.
When you ask them about some of the defining points in their lives so far, they will note that they still remember the flip phone. So they still remember pre-iPhone, whereas me as an Xer, I still remember manual typewriter. But it's cool that they kind of have that reference point of at least a little bit of what life was like, at least the older Gen Zers, before the iPhone came into being. But in terms of technology, one of the other things I love so much about them is that many of them are gamers.
A 2022 Deloitte Digital Media Trends study found that about 3 in 10 Gen Z teens consider gaming to be their favorite activity.
What the gamers, Gen Z gamers, have taught me is a whole new respect for that technology and how Gen Z is taking it to the next level. So, for example, there's been, ever since the days of Atari and Pac-Man, which I remember as a Gen Xer, there has been the stereotype of the gamer in the dark basement, probably their parents' basement in their 30s, 40s, and maybe now 50s, and they're just staring at their screens all day and letting their brains rot away. But what Gen Z gamers have really taught me is the skills, the incredible skills and talents that actually go into playing video games and how technologically savvy they have to be. So think in terms of critical and strategic thinking, communication skills, the graphic and artistic design element that goes in. When we talk about social emotional learning, so many social emotional skills are put into navigating video games.
In fact, during the COVID pandemic, when many young people couldn't meet in person, gaming was a great way to connect with friends online and still get some form of interaction. Unlike TV or social media, video games offer a live, active form of entertainment where friends can bond over voice chat. Now, almost 3 years later, it's no secret that COVID forever changed certain societal norms. It impacted how we work and learn and led to lasting disruptions in education and child development.
Every day, it seems on the news, we're hearing of the studies and the research being done on just how badly impacted Gen Zers, as well as everybody, but a lot of studies specifically on high school, college students, and younger students, the pandemic was. And I agree, it was really bad for all of us, but they're also missing that element of how resilient they are and how they are bouncing back. And they're talking about what they went through, which is something hopefully the rest of us are also able to do. So I think one of the positives coming out is Gen Z's resilience, that yes, it impacted them, and it impacted them in some really negative ways, the pandemic did, but they're able to bounce back. Now they're back on college campuses. And even though they're having some of those residual effects with mental health from the pandemic, they're able to keep moving forward. And I think that's something we really have to look at and, hopefully be inspired by.
Schlimm sees firsthand how Gen Zers are often much more open with their thoughts and emotions and actively voice their struggles.
one of the things that really struck me early on was the fact that they are authentically imperfect. They're authentically imperfect. And that is such a compliment because they wear their imperfections proudly, where, the rest of us in previous generations would have tried to cover up those imperfections as much as we could and still do, right? But Gen Zers don't. They wear those imperfections and they wear them proudly, and they're happy to talk about them in really productive ways.
In general, Schlimm says Gen Zers are big proponents of expanding mental health care and lessening its stigma in society.
Just by using and saying the words aloud, like anxiety, depression, suicide, I need help, I was just so inspired and so impacted. And I'm like, you guys, do you realize how incredible it is that you're just speaking those words aloud? I said, this is the biggest leap forward the world has ever seen in mental health advocacy. And this is a gift you're already giving to the world.
Apart from Gen Z, each generation adds a unique element to society. While we're all different, it's important to step outside your comfort zone and have conversations with people who are half as old as you or twice as old. Who knows what you'll learn? 10 or 15 years from now, Gen Zers will be scratching their own heads trying to figure out why younger generations act, talk, or dress a certain way. In fact, researchers have already coined the next group following Gen Z. This new population is called Generation Alpha and includes people born after 2012. What will the world in which they grow up be like? To find out more about this topic and our guest, John Schlimm, visit viewpointsradio.org. Also, check out Schlimm's book, What Would Gen Z Do?, now available online and in select bookstores. For more behind the scenes, search Viewpoints Radio on Twitter and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri, studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson. This segment was brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. If you've had COVID, you can get it again. And next time, it could be worse, especially for those 50 or older or with a chronic condition. An updated vaccine gives you better protection from COVID's worst outcomes. Find COVID vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. We can do this. Coming up next week.
They're on a very fixed light-dark cycle even in space, even though they're going around the Earth every 90 minutes, and so their day-night cycle is a 90-minute cycle.
The ways in which astronauts sleep in space. Then,
it's indescribable what a person goes through as an innocent man being charged with very, very serious crimes.
Every year, innocent people in the U.S. are convicted of serious crimes they didn't commit and sentenced to years in prison. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.